I'm realizing I've been overcomplicating things, and that purpose is in fact quite simple. Purpose comes from renouncing our coping mechanisms to cope with the pain of living in a misaligned world. To renounce those mechanisms and to allow passion to guide. And I'm realizing that the coping mechanisms are often in place because we tell ourselves that we don't have space for our passions. We tell ourselves that we're too tired, that we're too overworked, that we have too many responsibilities, that we're too deeply entrapped in pain. And so our mind creates excuses and habituations from the past, perpetuated from false programming, to convince us that we have to cling to the coping mechanisms, to the ghostly pleasures, to vice, to avoidance. To perpetual refusal of inner confrontation, of the patience required in the acknowledgement that healing is a slow process. Slow like all of these plants, all of these mountains, growing and becoming in an eternal stream of time. It's that Taoist quote, nature doesn't hurry, yet everything is accomplished. And here's the context of where this is currently coming from. I have long been clinging to a pattern of avoidance since I was a youngin', since I was about yay big, this tall. Back then it was video games, TV, wild internet use. Now it's doom scrolling, just like mindless numbing. A coping mechanism for my pain, seeking emotional safety where I know it not to dwell. And the reason that I seek this coping, this emotional safety and illusion, is because I've convinced myself that I don't have space, time, energy, power, presence for my passion, my purpose. I feel purposeless. I feel like my energy has to be given to things that don't resonate with me instead of my passions. And so because of the pain of that cultivated choice, habituated pattern, which I am confronting and uncovering within myself, because of this story, because of the pain that this story inflicts on my reality, because of the pain of the purposeless that I've cultivated, because of the pain of telling myself I don't have space and time for my passion, I pour my free time into the very behaviors that make me feel purposeless. Doom scrolling, watching YouTube videos, often YouTube videos on how to improve myself. So I can project outwardly my desire to better myself by seeing someone else who's already doing it, by seeing someone who is living the kind of life that I want to live. And so he gives advice, step-by-step tutorials on how to embody your passion and your purpose, on how to offer your gifts on a particular platform to escape the rat race. These kinds of things. And a lot of it is very useful and educational, and I've been navigating this realm in a way where each video is actually like a mirror of confirmation that is like, all right, now it's time to let go of the videos, to let go of like instructions. You already know what actions to take. Now take action. Instead of convincing yourself that you're taking action when really you're still embodying the pattern of avoidance. So, we avoid our pain with coping mechanisms because of the pain with coping mechanisms to cope with the pain that these coping mechanisms induce, proliferate, perpetuate. The antidote, the very simple, absolute divine simplicity, is to just let them go. Let go of the coping mechanisms. Let go of those behaviors that you know do not serve you. Or maybe your mind convinces you that they serve you because you might like get some kind of esoteric knowledge. You might get some kind of value out of them. But it's like, what's the term I'm looking for? Pros and cons. How much benefit are you actually getting in face of the detriment that you're imposing upon yourself? And I'm as much speaking to myself here, because I'm just in this process, as I am to you. But there is such a massive shift that happens when I just allow myself to set the patterns aside, to let them go, to go into nature. And earlier I went to the beach and I set up a little table. There was a nice piece of wood, there were rocks, and I just made a little writing desk. And I just wrote for 2 hours. And writing is my passion. And a lot of the coping mechanism of like externally reaching into the void of the phone is because of this illusion that I tell myself that I don't have time and space to pursue my passion. When all that my passion requires, in my case, is a blank page, a piece of paper, a pen, and just writing. And like often the first page, the first half of a page is like, oh, this kind of sucks. There's like, I don't really feel like writing right now. This isn't flow state yet. This is difficult. It requires effort. It requires discipline. It requires will. It requires intention, which at first is a little bit more difficult than just tuning out, than the instantaneous pleasure that is provided by illusion, but that is fleeting and only perpetuates the pain. But the moment that I get over that little hump of lack of motivation, the moment that I just allow myself to write, especially if I allow myself to be in nature as I'm doing it, the moment that you allow yourself to say no to the patterns that don't serve you, that you know do not serve you, go in nature and practice your passion, you can tune in to the self-evidence of this simplicity, to the magnificence and the magic of your soul coming to life and reminding you that the layers that you are shedding are in fact illusory. That all of the ways in which we cling to old programs and paradigms and perpetuations of our pain and coping mechanisms for the pain of purposelessness, that we are clinging to illusions that are essentially begging us to let them go, or at least our hearts and our souls, when we allow ourselves to feel, are like crying children. Just asking us to play, to choose peace rather than self-harm. Which is all to say that the story that you tell yourself, I have to cling to coping mechanisms because I am in pain, because I don't have this, because I don't have that, because scarcity has convinced itself that it is real in a world where the abundance of the earth provides the heavenly substance of the sky infused into materiality and births into infinitude the proliferation of this life. You plant a single seed, a single mustard seed, a single watermelon seed, and they will just continue to grow and amplify. A single acorn can become 1,000,000 oak trees. And somehow we convince ourselves that that's not enough. And we choose instead to cling to fleeting pleasures and to ephemeral illusions. So this is an uncovering of the lie that I have been telling myself, that I don't have time, energy, or space for my passions and for nature and for prayer and for God. And thus, And thus it's acceptable to seek emotional safety in ephemeral passions, ephemeral pleasures, rather than my passions. To recognize this lie, to just like put it out there and admit to the world, like, look, I've been lying to myself and I am fucking tired of doing that. It is excruciating, it is exhausting, it is dead. And if it's dead, then I should let it go. And let the parts of me that are alive within my passions be the places in which I seek emotional safety, in which I seek purpose, fulfillment. Pain, passion, and purpose are all interwoven as the pathway of pathos, pathos being feeling, empathy, compassion, passion. So that any impulse for any kind of coping mechanism, I mentioned scrolling, I mentioned YouTube, there's also food, which is one that I'm sitting with, which is like, it's very easy to feel uncomfortable and to be like, I'm just gonna eat some pastries. I'm just going to consume instead of create. To feel your pain, to pursue your passion. These things are interwoven and they lead to purpose, which becomes bliss. It becomes peace. Today, I've experienced this contrast so deeply because last night I embodied this pattern, which I embody every 2 weeks or so, which is like I do pretty well, and then suddenly I'm like, oh, back to the fucking scrolling. And I've been getting better at letting it go, but like this time it was just like, ah. And so today I just like woke up feeling not great. I let it disrupt my sleep, disrupt my self-regeneration. And so today I just kind of like felt like that in this groggy ripple of zombification that is the avoidance of pain, which is the pain itself communicating back to me like, hey, this is what you're imposing upon yourself by clinging to illusion instead of truth. Are you ready to let that go? And I went to the beach, I went to the ocean, and I made this little writing desk and I wrote there for 2 hours. And I transmuted myself, my somatic sensation, my inner feeling of dread into peace, into presence, into equanimity, into connectedness with the divine simplicity and felicity of being, of nature. And I really believe that it's truly that simple. That metaphysically, once we finally make a choice, prayerfully guided, prayerfully held, to get at the root of why we seek in coping mechanisms, and to just allow our passions to heal us, that our reality literally shifts, our experience of the Empyrean becoming the world, becoming the empirical experience of the world. I now have an etymological trace to explore. That when we do that, God begins to realign everything. Be like, all right, you were once in the interconnected causal network of pain avoidance and illusion. Once you let that go, you are then in the interconnected causal network reality of passion, of love, of compassion, of heart. Of heart rather than heart avoidance. And my last video was about the necessity of existential courage to heal existential doubt. Doubt, etymologically, is rooted in fear, in dread, in uncertainty. Courage is rooted in the core, in the heart, in passion, in thumos. Fear is when you don't trust your own heart. Dread is when you avoid your own heart. Uncertainty is when you don't listen to your own heart. Courage is your heart, is trusting your heart, is allowing your heart, is letting go of things that get in the way of your heart, and letting the light of your heart dissolve all that microcosmically within your body and macrocosmically within the body of the earth does not serve, is no longer needed as a teacher of contrast in illusion. And this seems to be purpose revealing itself within divine simplicity. And this is the last thing I'll say. Aristotle spoke of the good and how do we form the good and perfect society. It might have been Plato, but I think it was Aristotle. And what he said was that every human being comes with a telos, a purpose, a perfectly divinely curated design. The woodworker is made for woodworking. If he tries to be a bricklayer, he won't like it as much. He's got to be a woodworker. Those who belong in kitchens, those who belong in government, those who belong in whatever their soul's calling is. We need to create a society where people are allowed and guided to pursue their passions and their callings. And when we allow this to happen, that is how a perfect society just runs itself. And if we observe the natural world, that's how it works. Every single fauna and flora, every plant and creature and living being plays its role in the universal tapestry of being. And every star and every luminary plays its astrological role in the becoming of the world. God did not create anything without purpose. Purposelessness comes when we step away from the guidance of God. Realign yourself with God, and you realign yourself with the innate harmony that is present in the world. And it all begins within. And when you do it within, it ripples. And it becomes reality. And when we're talking about grand purpose, what is the grand purpose? What is the grand reason for being? It seems to me that there's something there about that question. So, I'm going to leave it at that. And I'm going to pray that I be guided to truly, in an embodied way, letting go of the coping mechanisms, of patterns of behavior which only perpetuate deceit and falsity. And my prayer for you is that you will do the same. To let go of your patterns of self-deceit, which ripples into deceit towards others. To let those patterns go and to just choose your passion. Make space, make time with your will, with your prayer. Ask God, guide me to embody my passion and my purpose. And to let passion and purpose free your heart. That's it. Thank you. And may you feel the equanimity of these mountains. Thank you.